2 Samuel 17. So let me give you a hint as to what's coming. What's coming in this chapter is there are 2 Samuel 17. There are two plans to eliminate David. One of them by Ahithophel, the other by Hushai, I think his name is. And so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you, think, what is the difference in the two plans? These are two plans to go after David. And Solomon, by the way, not Solomon, Absalom. You know what Absalom's name is? Abba means father. Shalom, peace. Father of peace.
Yeah, not really.
Wow. I think he's been anything but peace since he was born, right? How come he didn't take on the personality of his name? You know? Father of peace. Abba Shalom. Absalom.
Before we get into this, can you remind me if Ahithophel, which one of them was David's advisor?
Ahithophel. Yes.
And then Hushai was...
Hushai was David's man, but David sent him back to Jerusalem and said, go back there. Yeah. And frustrate the plans. Yeah. So, well, let's just get into 2 Samuel 17. Let me read it for us, so follow along. It's pretty much a narrative of what happens. So this is when Absalom comes into Jerusalem. Remember what he did up on the top of the castle? And he basically solidified his claim to the throne and that there'd be no reconciling between him and his father. Not after what he did. So 2 Samuel 17. Moreover, Ahithophel said to Absalom. So here's Absalom's plan. Ahithophel's plan. Now watch, pay attention to the details, okay? Ahithophel said to Absalom, let me choose now out of 12,000 men, and I will arise and pursue after David this night. I'll give you a little hint. Look at the pronouns. Let me choose out, and I, getting the point here? Verse 2, and I will come upon him while he is weary and weak-handed. Now remember, David's fleeing. Right. David and his family, he's not in chariots. He's walking with his wife and his kids and everything that they could carry. So Ahithophel says, let me go after him, right? Verse 2, and I will come upon him while he's weary and weak-handed, and I will make him afraid, and all the people that are with him will flee, and I'm emphasizing the pronouns, folks, will smite the king only, and I will bring back all the people to thee. The man whom thou seekest is as if all return, so all the people shall be in peace. And this saying, the saying, pleased Absalom well, and all the elders. So they heard Ahithophel's plan, and they liked it. Okay, and we'll come back to it when I'm going to ask you the difference in his and Hushai's. But then Absalom said, verse 5, call Hushai. In other words, get a second opinion, right? You guys that see doctors, good idea to get a second opinion? Then Absalom said, call now Hushai, the Archite also, and let us hear likewise what he says. Then when Hushai was come to Absalom, Absalom spake unto him, saying, Ahithophel has spoken after this manner. In other words, he told what Ahithophel said. Here's his question. Shall we do after his saying? If not, speak up. Hushai said to Absalom, the counsel that Ahithophel has given is not good at this time. For, said Hushai, thou knowest thy father and his men, that they are mighty men, and that they be chaffed in their minds. Interesting way of saying they're sharp. As a bear, as a bear robbed of her whelps in the field, Thy father is a man of war, and will not lodge with the people. Behold, he is hid now in some pit, or in some other place. And it will come to pass, when some of them be overthrown at the first, that whosoever heareth it will say, There is a slaughter among the people that follows Absalom. And he also that is valiant, whose heart is as the heart of a lion, shall utterly melt. For all Israel knows that thy father is a mighty man. They which be with him are valiant men. Therefore I counsel, here's the plan, that all Israel be generally gathered unto thee. Look at the pronoun. From Dan even to Beersheba, as the sand that is by the sea for multitude, and that thou, another pronoun, go to battle in thine own person. You see the emphasis here?
Yeah.
Hopefully you're seeing the difference. All right. So, verse 12, shall we come upon him in some place where he shall be found. Notice it's the plural here. We will come where he will be found, and we will light upon him as the dew falleth on the ground, and of him and all of his men that are with him, there shall not be left so much as one. Moreover, if he be gotten into a city, then shall all Israel bring ropes to that city, and we will draw it into the river, until there be not one small stone found there. And Absalom and all the men of Israel said, The counsel of Hushai the Archite is better than the counsel of Ahithophel. For the Lord has appointed to defeat, because the Lord had appointed to defeat the good counsel of Ahithophel, to the intent that the Lord might bring evil upon Absalom. Then Hushai, well, let me stop there. Let's stop and then we'll go on. Two plans. What was the first one? Ahithophel says,
They'll go after him.
your dad is weak, he's weary, he's fleeing. Let me go after him. And I'll go get him, and I'll bring him back, or I'll destroy him, whatever. And the people will just all come back and be a part of work. They'll honor you, because their leader will be gone. But notice all the I's that we had there. Who was going to do this?
Ahithophel.
Ahithophel was going to do it.
He's
So-
gonna be the mighty man of valor.
So when Hushai is asked, Hushai uses plurals. We. And so his plan was, wait, don't go running out there, because David is like a bear robbed of its cubs. You don't mess with him. He's a man of war. Now, which one was he? Weary and tired, or was he a man of war?
Both.
Probably both. Maybe more toward one than the other. Obviously, he has to be weary if he's
Pretty
running.
weary.
And we're going to find later on that people feed him along the way. They didn't even have enough food for themselves.
Yeah.
But the second plan, Hushai, says, wait, don't jump into action here. Let's establish a plan. Let's call Israel together. Let's get a big army together, and let's just do this right. And if David goes into a city, remember what he said there, we'll just put a rope around it and throw the city in the river. I mean, that's a little exaggerated. I don't know if people have ever dragged a city into a river. But what is he doing here? Exaggerating.
Just making it sound simple.
And he's appealing to who?
Absalom.
Absalom.
Well, he's telling Absalom also to go to war.
Yeah.
Plus, he's giving David time to actually prepare, get
That's
where he's
true.
supposed to be. So there's the ulterior motive.
So that is brought out in verse 14. That, let me read it again. Absalom and all the men of Israel said, the counsel of Hushai is better than the counsel of Ahithophel. For the Lord, and this is the editorial comment. The Lord appointed to defeat the good counsel of Ahithophel, to the intent that the Lord might bring evil on Absalom. So the Lord, frustrated, it says, the good counsel. So it seems like the better thing to do would have been to just take advantage of David's weakness and go after him. It seems like that would have been the better of choice. But what Hushai is doing is he's appealing to Absalom. Look what you can do. Not what I'm going to do, what you can do. You can show yourself strong. This is your chance. Gather all of Israel. Look, you're unifying the whole country to go after an enemy.
And it will be glorious.
And it will, yeah. And you can do this. And it says the Lord, it says appointed to defeat the good counsel.
Does that mean the Lord put him there to, I mean, this is the Lord's doing this on purpose, giving Hushai the advantage? So, in order to mess up Absalom.
Yeah.
That's what that's saying?
Yeah?
Yeah. Okay.
You know,
The Lord got people to listen to Hushai's advice, even though Absalom really
Probably had a better
Ahithophel
idea.
probably had the better plan.
yeah. And we're going to find out that Ahithophel, he didn't take it very well. Okay, later in the chapter, he's going to end his life because he didn't like them going on Hushai's plan.
That was his identity.
Ah,
He was the great counselor. Expected Absalom to take his advice.
and who's this Johnny come lately that comes into town? Hushai. Hushai, who's Hushai?
If he's not, if I'm not correct, if he's not even Israelite.
Right.
Right.
He's called the Archite
Archives.
from a different area. But he was faithful to David.
Right.
Yeah, he was.
So this brings up a point. Let me just throw this out. You know, we talk about God being sovereign. Is God sovereign? That means, is he in control of all things? Of course he is. Sunday we're going to talk about this a little bit because in Acts 19 we're going to see where the town of Ephesus had a whole sector controlled by the evil, the demonic side. And when Paul was in Ephesus and ministry was happening, these people were converted. They brought all their stuff and burned it, all their idols and everything. God is in control, but he's given a certain amount of control to the devil. Right? Okay.
God also knows it's still going to be Absalom's choice, but Absalom has that pride that says, if I lead them,
Yeah,
then I'm the one people will remember.
Yep.
yeah, that's true. So it comes down to who made the decision. Did God do it or did Absalom decide to go this second plan?
Yes.
Yes. Black box kind of
All right, good. You guys are listening. God is sovereign, but he allows us a certain amount of freedom, but none of us can ever, if we mess up, we can't point at God and say, well, God did it. God made me do it. No. Even though God knew it was going to happen, and God decrees, okay, take the example of Judas. Judas, someone had to betray the Lord for him to be crucified. Can Judas ever stand back and say, it's not my fault? Because that was God's plan that he would be betrayed. And I was just doing what God had already determined was going to happen. Can he accuse God of that? Can he say, I'm innocent? Because God, no.
He decided to take the money. He decided to I mean, it was his decision. That's why you say
Yeah.
free will. We, the brain is hooked to we. It's not hooked, it's hooked right here. And so we, one way with the help of Satan or one way with the help of God, we're making decisions.
So
That's our free will.
think of it this way, two levels. On the human level, we're operating on a human level, and we are doing what we're doing. But on a higher level, God has already ordained that history will carry out the way he has planned. Okay? There's never a time when man can go, oh no, God lost control. He never does. Even though we may not understand fully what God is doing, we still have to trust him. So at our level, on our human level, we are operating with our desires, our plans, and yet God has already ordained how history will work out. But he doesn't make us do it. We choose to do the choice, to make the choices we make. Are you all following me here? And I think that's what's going on here. That's why verse 14, I got it circled in my Bible. It's a beautiful balance between man's choice and God's ordaining. They chose, Absalom chose the counsel of Hushai. But God had already determined that that's the way it was going to work, so that Absalom would eventually be taken down. But Absalom chose it. God didn't make him choose that. And that, by choosing that one, that was the demise of Absalom. He ended up losing his life in this battle that he chose. But God already determined, according to verse 14, let me read it again. The counsel of Hushai is better than the counsel of Ahithophel. That's what they decided. For the Lord appointed to defeat the good counsel of Ahithophel, to the intent that the Lord might bring evil. So God in his ultimate plan knew that Ahithophel's plan would not be the one chosen. And God ordained that. But he didn't force Absalom to make that choice. He made it on his own. Are you all following me here? It's a balance that's hard to explain. It's like Chuck was saying, it's the black box thing. It's beyond our understanding, but we just see those pieces coming together.
Well, and another thing too, Pastor Paul, is as humans, depending on our upbringing, depending on how we were taught, sometimes we have trouble trusting maybe something that's not an authority of us, but something that's higher. And so, to our own detriment, sometimes we can't see God because we don't trust something. We don't have that trust. And that's the thing I know that I have to do. How do I trust God? Because if I can't trust God, what am I doing?
Right.
You know, so.
Okay, so Absalom, the father of peace, Abba Shalom, Absalom, chooses to wait, gather this huge army. Of course, that gave David plenty of time to get across the Jordan and get over into the land of Gilead. And we'll see that later. But that's what Hushai wanted. He wanted to give David some time, right? All right, so let's keep going. Verse 15. Then said Hushai unto Zadok. Who's Zadok? And to Abiathar. Who are those guys?
Aren't they priests?
They're priests.
Son of a priest.
They are the priests, and they have these two sons
Oh, yeah, they're.
who are going to be the
Messengers.
messengers. They're going to run back forth. Now here's another glimpse of God's sovereignty and man's choices. Okay, watch this. So Hushai says to Zadok and Abiathar, thus and thus did Ahithophel counsel, Absalom and the elders of Israel, and thus have I counseled. So he explains the whole thing to them. Here's what went down. Ahithophel had this plan. I had mine. They chose my plan. Now therefore, send quickly and tell David, saying, lodge not this night in the plains of the wilderness, but speedily pass over, lest the king be swallowed up and all the people that are with him. Hushai realizes this is very time sensitive. You got to get out of here, David. Don't drag your feet. Get across that river, because he's headed east. Now Jonathan and Himeaz, those are the sons, stayed by and Rogel, for they might not be seen to come into the city. And a servant girl, the King James says a wench. My goodness, who uses the word wench? Did the wench sweep the floor? All right, it's a servant girl. Went and told them, and they went and told King David. So here's the point. The two boys, the sons, they're not in Jerusalem. Zadok and Abiathar are in Jerusalem. So Hushai tells them, go tell David. But here's the problem. The sons aren't in Jerusalem. They're the runners. They're in a town, I think it's about 10 miles east of Jerusalem. So what do? they get a servant girl. Now this is amazing to me that they trusted this entire plan with this young girl.
I know.
Now, if I were them, I probably would have sat the girl down and said, now here's the situation. This happened, this happened, this happened. Do you get it? Now, repeat back to me. That's what I have to tell my kids, repeat back to me. What did I say? And then make sure they get all the points. But they put incredible trust in this servant girl who ran from Jerusalem all the way to this town to tell the two boys.
That's where the Lord ordained that.
Yeah.
That they use this girl
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
what God wants her to do.
Supposedly, so no one would know. But we know that that wasn't the case. But anyway, I find it amazing that this servant girl was able to do that. Not only hear the whole thing and repeat it word for word when she found the boys in a town east of there. But now therefore, verse 17, Jonathan and Ahimaaz stayed by Enrogel. Oh, I read that already, didn't I? So the girl went and told them. Verse 18, nevertheless, oh boy, this adds a little suspense to the story. Some kid, who is this? We don't even know his name or anything. Some kid, a lad, saw them. So apparently, when the kid saw either the servant telling them or saw the two boys when they were in the town, we're not quite sure where he saw them, but he saw this go down. And it says, a lad saw them and told Absalom. So he either tells his dad tells, somehow it gets back to Absalom. And then, but they went both of them away quickly and came to a man's house in Bahurim, which had a well in his court, whither they went down. So they went and hid in the well because they realized they were found out. And a woman took and spread a covering over the well's mouth and spread ground corn thereon. She must have put a board there, spread out some big thing, and put the corn on, I guess to dry the corn. And this thing was not known. And when Absalom's servants came to the woman, so somehow the word gets back, I saw a young girl telling these two boys the whole story of what happened, Ahithophel and Hushai. Word gets back, Absalom sends servants out looking. Verse 20, when Absalom's servants came to the woman to the house, they said, where is Ahimaaz and Jonathan? Oh boy. And the woman said unto them, now watch what goes on here. The Bible states what is. It states what is. David's sin was recorded, and this woman's lie is recorded. But it doesn't mean that it's a prescription for us to carry out the same. So look what it says. The woman said unto them, they be gone over the brook of water. And when they had sought and could not find him, they returned to Jerusalem. Okay, so what happened? The woman lies. Now wait a minute. Isn't God in charge here? Yeah, he is. He was going to protect those two boys so that they could get the word to David, right? Her lie obviously isn't the right thing, but God used it as part of the plan. He didn't tell her to lie. Okay, you're all following me here? The Bible records what happened. I often think, Corrie ten Boom, you remember her? The one who suffered because of they called it the hiding place. Her dad was a watchmaker and they harbored Jews. And when the soldiers came to the door, her father would always say, we are not going to lie. He made it a point. You can read it in the book, The Hiding Place. Here's what he would do. When they came to the door and they said, are there Jews in this place? He's not going to say no, that's a lie. He feared God to the point where he would say, if you think there are, you come look. And they had a false wall where they hid the people behind the wall. And that happened numerous times. Soldiers would come, they would go door to door. Are there any Jews in this house? When they came to his shop, he would say, if you think there are, come look. But he never lied. Now, that was his choice. But it would have also been his choice to lie. He could have said, no, I'm a watchmaker. This is my shop. You think I'm hiding Jews here? I'm not even Jewish. He could have lied, but he chose to not lie. All right. This lady apparently chose to lie. It's her choice.
How do you call it deception?
Yeah.
Well, a lie is a lie.
Right.
But here's the plan. That's why I said there's two levels. In God's sovereign plan, these boys were not going to be killed. They were going to fulfill their mission. That's God's plan. How did it work out? It worked out through Hushai telling the priests told the young girl, the girl told those two, and then someone saw them, and so they hid in the well, and the lady lied about them being in the well. The soldiers go away, and they continue their plan. So there's two levels here. God did not make her lie, but that was her choice to lie. She could have probably said something else, like, really? Do you really think I'm harboring two guys?
Do you see him anywhere?
Do you see him? I mean, come on, look. I don't know. But her choice was to lie. So again, I'm getting back to that whole thing of
Let me
sovereignty.
split a hair with you.
What's that?
Let me split a hair with you. If you act like they aren't there, isn't that right?
If your motive is to deceive, but then again, spreading this thing over the well, isn't that deceiving?
Oh, yes, that's what I'm saying. So, no matter what, aren't you lying? Let's say that the guys came and she said, "What do you see anywhere?" I don't know.
One thing.
They say withholding the truth, isn't that a lie?
But it said who?
Who?
It's a truthful
history, during the German War.
I don't think her motive was to
Not a
deceive.
lot of deception going on.
Yeah.
In order to deceive the Germans.
Shh, listen up, guys.
Right.
Yeah.
It was, you either call it a lie or a deception,
Yeah.
but what was it ordained by God?
Well, God ordains the main plan. That's why I'm saying there's two levels here. One thing I've learned from watching the news, I watch some of these congressional hearings where they'll pull these people in and they'll interrogate. I cannot believe how many of them don't answer the questions.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
And it's so frustrating for the interrogator, the senator, whatever. They'll say, just give me a yes or a no. Well, thank you for that question, Senator. And they'll go, stop. I asked you a question. What was the question? What? And they'll say the question again. Well, thank you for that question, Senator. They don't answer the question, and it's so frustrating. Listen, one thing I've learned from that is, do you have to answer every question? No, you don't have to. Not in life. Now, obviously, when you're a public servant, you're being called to witness something, that's a little different. But God sovereignly decreed that David would be king again. He would survive this. The word would get to him. He'd get across the river. He'd be safe. But on a human level, you've got all these things working. Some good, some bad. But God is working out his plans and purposes. I just want to leave it there with you, okay? Just be in awe of what an amazing God we have. That people can even do evil and God uses that for good. Y'all following me there? Nobody else can do that, folks. Only God
Yeah.
can take evil and weave it into the tapestry. You know how weaving goes, right? Threads. Weaves it in. That's how amazing our God is. So anyway, let's pick it up here with verse 20. Well, are we at 20? No, 21. Came to pass, after they were departed, that they came up out of the well and went and told David, and said to David, arise and pass quickly over the water, for thus has Ahithophel counseled against you. And David arose and all the people that were with him. Remember, he's not traveling light.
Right.
He's got family members, people. They're not warriors. They're just, most of them, his family here. He arose and all the people were with him, and they passed over the Jordan by morning light. There lacked not one of them that was not gone over the Jordan.
They traveled all night.
Yeah, I mean, these guys did not stop. Now look at this, verse 23. When Ahithophel saw that his counsel was not followed, he saddled his ass and arose and gat him home to the house, to his city. Look what he does. He's a pretty smart guy.
We're having a middle school breakdown, just a minute.
Middle school breakdown? All right.
Someone says donkey.
I know. I'm reading the Old English. So what did Ahithophel do? He goes home. He put his household in order. And he hanged himself and died. Was buried in the sepulcher with his father. Okay. Remember, he's a wise counselor. He's an extremely wise man. He did good and he did bad. What was the good? He got his house in order. What's that mean? He made sure his bills were paid, his, everything was in order for his wife to take over. The mortgage was paid. Her name was on the title. I don't know. I'm just throwing out stuff, right? He got his house in order and then he hung himself. Now, he's smart enough to get his house in order. Why do you think he hung himself? Any ideas?
Guilty conscience.
Shame.
What's that?
Guilty conscience.
Guilty? Could be. Shame. Remember, his plan wasn't chosen. And he's smart enough to know, listen to this, this is my take on it. He's smart enough to know that his plan was the right plan.
Yeah.
He knows that his plan would have gotten David. But something frustrated his plan. Remember what David had prayed? Lord, when he sent Hushai back, please frustrate the plans of Ahithophel. I think, this is my opinion, I think, yeah, he felt shame. He felt like, he was slighted because he's the counselor and some guy that came into town.
Well, he's been supplanted.
Yeah. I think he's wise enough to know that was a God thing. That was not a human thing. That they chose the other plan. And that gave David enough time to get away.
But I think he also knew David would come back again.
That's true.
Yeah.
And remember, he had already solidified or at least made his choice that he went with Absalom, not with David.
He knew he was going to be killed anyway.
He's a traitor.
And so he knew that this was it. It's over for him.
That's right.
Because now David's not going to get caught. He's going to get out of town. And God had done something supernatural. For them to choose another guy's plan that he knew was not the best. Are y'all following me here? So what's he do? He puts his house in order. And then he hung himself. Wow.
That's another Judas.
Yeah, that's right. So let me finish the chapter here, verse 24. Then David came to Mahanaim, and Absalom passed over Jordan, he and all the men of Israel with him. And Absalom made Amasa king of the host instead of Joab. And Amasa was a man's son whose name was Ithra, the Israelite, that went into Abigail, the daughter of Nahash, sister to Jeriah, Joab's mother. Boy, that's a lot of whew. But the writer just wants us to know all the lineage, who they're related to. So Israel and Absalom pitched in the land of Gilead. So Absalom now has this huge army, and he's headed that way. And it came to pass when David was come to Mahanaim that Shob, the son of Nahash of Rabbah of the children of Ammon, and Machir, the son of Amiel of Lodabar, and Barzillai, The Gileadite of Rogelim brought beds. Look what they did. And basins, and earthen vessels, and wheat, and barley, and flour, and parched corn, and beans, and lentils, and parched pulse, and honey, and butter, and sheep, and cheese of kine for David and for the people that were with him to eat. For they said, the people are hungry, and weary, thirsty, in the wilderness. So, I think Ahithophel was right. David was weary. I think his counsel was probably, if you're trying to get rid of David, that would have been the best plan.
Absolutely.
So, if you take time to look at all these people in verse 27 who brought them, they were not necessarily Israelites. These were people of other cultures, but they're welcoming David in, which is another miracle, folks.
It is.
Here he is, weary.
Welcome and cared for.
It could have been the perfect timing to just eliminate this guy. But God is protecting him even in, we might say, enemy territory.
Strange lands.
In lands that didn't belong to him. You got the Ammonites in there. Ammonites were problematic to the Israelites. So what do we see here? Let me just stop and rehearse this. Do we see God at work anywhere in this story? You see him at work? We see him guiding in the affairs of this council as far as how to proceed. We see him protecting David. We see him using insignificant people like a servant girl to transport the news, right, to the two boys who could then run and catch David. I just think of some applications. Why is it that God doesn't always use the most direct? And why isn't God, I'm not being disrespectful, okay? Why isn't God efficient? Why does it take so long, many times, for things to happen? Why can't God just snap his fingers and it's done? Look at us. Has he been patient with any of you? Has God been working on you for a long time? What's that?
It may be beyond your capability to understand.
No, that's true.
I
But-
imagine too that each and every thread in the story, all of these people, they also have lives.
Mm-hmm.
They also have futures. They also have
Good point.
purposes.
Yeah.
So God isn't just managing the big picture that we see. He's also managing everybody else's lives, all these little insignificant people. He's managing their lives too, and there may be reasons.
But they're not insignificant to God.
No,
Right.
that's right.
And
Yeah,
I'm
so
using
what-
the term insignificant
I
in
know,
a
yeah,
kind of
the
guarded.
little people. But yeah,
Yeah.
because he's not just managing the big picture.
Right.
He's managing each and every one of their
Exactly.
lives, and there may be reasons why they need to do this.
And you know,
This all began was when David committed the first sin with
Yeah.
Sheba. This all began and God had already ordained that he was going to lose the
Right.
kingdom to his son. So but now I see that still Absalom is not ordained by God to be king.
Right.
And I don't see where a priest has told him this is going to be your kingdom as God had told David, this is going to be your kingdom.
Yeah,
But yet you're going to lose it.
Absalom was not anointed.
No.
Right.
Not anointed.
but you know what's amazing too, if you think about all these people that are involved in this process, it's not the most efficient way to get a message from Jerusalem to where David is. Go through all these different, why couldn't there have been one guy that just got on a horse and went and told David? Boom, it's done.
God's goal is different.
But God involved all these people who are not necessarily, powerful people. He used weak people, servant girl, a woman who has to hide, and she lied. She's not perfect.
And
We
so
all have a purpose in God's kingdom.
There you go.
also notice the count of the women that were used.
Yeah.
and they're so overlooked at all times.
That's true.
I think he's giving them value.
Yeah, God doesn't overlook them.
You know, we don't have anything in the Word that tells us that David ever went back and thanked this servant girl. But I think knowing his personality and how he was so artistic and loved to write songs, what if he wrote a song about the servant girl? What a brave girl she was, you know, and maybe even include the lad who tried to, you know, stop the plans of God. And I mean, so what we learn here is God is using all these people, and for the rest of their lives, they could say, I had a part. God actually gave me the privilege of being a part of saving the king. Isn't that a cool thing?
Turned into her story.
Yeah. And then she could go on and tell that and encourage her when she's a mother and she has kids. Hey, kids, let me tell you about the time. You
Well, I
know?
find it interesting too that mankind, we don't think that way. We are the ones that put people in different castes or in different categories. We have this thing where we gotta categorize everybody. God doesn't seem to do that. It's just,
Okay.
you know, whoever's there.
So God has a way of using different personalities, people. I don't know if you can look back in your life and thank the Lord for people that God brought into your life at certain points. They blessed you. They blessed your life. And then maybe God took them out of your life for a certain time. Think back. I mean, what an amazing God that he brought people in at just the right time when you needed something. You needed help or a word of encouragement. Well, that's the way God is. And you know what? He continues to do that today. So it's not like this is a story and that's the end of it. God never uses people again. No, this is the way he operates. Yeah.
You also might have some negative influences that God brought upon you as a way to teach you a lesson or to inspire you to do something else.
Right.
Or to test you and
Or
see.
test you as
Yeah.
another part of it.
Good.
Under the care of Carol.
To teach you a lesson.
So does anybody want to just take a minute and mention how God brought somebody into your life? A servant girl who saved your life? Or a counsel that you needed to hear?
She
Or
didn't do windows.
Work-wise, like, I look back at when I was with LAPD, and, you know, I was like devastated when that didn't happen for me, but now I look back and say that God used that, because if I would have stayed with LAPD, I would have never met Ed. You know, my life would have been totally different. I would have lived still in LA. I wouldn't have moved to Temecula, California, where I met him. And just, I
Wow.
think sometimes, you know,
yeah.
it was devastating, but in the long run, it was actually one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Wow. That's a great story. Yeah.
I say it, I've never heard that story before. Where'd that one come from, Carol?
Yeah, Karen.
I'm grateful that the Lord let us use the ranch to help the kids from the juvenile facility and other places, and how they would write us and thank us that we changed their life.
Wow, that's good.
So it was a wonderful, wonderful life.
Yeah. Great.
I was reading this morning, I read Acts chapter 13 to 14, 15. That's which is that chapter I started at 16. Like 4 chapters I did for my dad's old book. So he was reading all those chapters. I was reading it and still appreciate it.
Jojo likes to read along. Yeah, was there a hand back there? Somebody?
Well, when I'm frustrated, I go back to my little church I grew up in. And Minnie was tall, thin, with gray hair piled in it on her head. Little Lige was all bent. And my sister and I led singing